So, welcome my guests today, the Flower Baby and Simon.
The writing standards are getting better here, and we think that is from a greater emphasis on getting the children understanding different texts and looking at stories and pushing reading and speaking and listening as well.
Flower Baby, well, how do you feel about all these things that have been happening?
Well, fighting in front of a flower baby isn't good.
I mean, how would you care about a fight? Your eyes are drawn on with a pen. You can't see anything.
The Flower Babies is a story where a class are asked to look after a bag of flour that's a baby, to teach them the responsibilities of parenthood. It's a secondary school class. In the text, it creates a lot of issues with the main character whose father left, makes him question a lot of things about his life. I mean, we put the modern twist of having the Kyle Bellamy show, the chat show, so that the children, that's what the children are familiar with, and it gets them arguing and creates that sort of discussion in the role of the characters.
Yes, sir.
I don't even see why you're fighting.
We don't do any silent reading. We sometimes do class reading or group reading, but we encourage discussion. So even if we were doing that, we'd have questions up on the board to get the children talking about it. But mainly we do try and do role play activities because the children remember it more.
I think it's disgraceful that you've done all the horrible things to the flower baby.
If you're immersed in text, you're picking up on the language, the rhythms, the vocabulary and the structures of a literary text, and so I think it's really important that children are immersed in text and steeped. I think it probably means they're steeped in the language of literature, and it also feeds into their writing, because if they've been absorbing the voices, the tunes, the patterns and rhythms of literature, it's something that we find echoes in their writing.
And let's give our guests a round of applause today. Thank you for watching.
The immersion of children in books is an ongoing process. It's not something that just happens for a week during book week and then you forget about it. It's something that's powerful in children's learning generally, not just in literacy. And it, I think, is really important that children have access to the best and opportunities to engage in those books for sustained lengths of time, so they can really get inside the books and study them in depth and really get to think about what it is that's going on in the book, and really have that kind of intensive understanding that comes with time and different routes into knowing the book and knowing it well.
The owl and the pussycat went to sea in a beautiful pea green boat. They took some honey and plenty of money wrapped up in a £5 note.
Reading aloud, if teachers do that regularly and with real expression and passion, is a perfect way of engaging children with books and reading. And through that experience of hearing the words lifted off the page, gives children real access to the tunes and the patterns and the rhythms of stories, and access to the language because it's a meaningful context.
We have an oral storytelling focus every term. So the idea is by the time the children leave school, they have a bank of about 15 traditional stories or fairy tales that they can tell by heart. So then if they're asked to write a story, they've got a bank that they can sort of pull from to get different ideas. So there should never be that blank of, I've got nothing to write about. The ICT we do a lot, where we have, the children are asked to either do soundtracks or sound effects for stories, and they've got to think about the emotions that the characters are doing things like, or they can create lower down the school, do picture boards and pictures to go with the different characters and chapters.
Yeah, what sort of sounds would you imagine?
Birds, maybe some different animals.
And the waves pushing against the boat.
It has been proven that there's been a problem with boys' literacy, particularly boys' writing. I think when we do the drama activities or the ICT activities, they don't really see it as literacy. So they don't think, oh, I'm going to have to do writing in this lesson, which is something that does kind of put them off. They really enjoy getting into role. We try and, pick texts that are brought, that will all the class will enjoy, including the boys, and give them the opportunity to get into role. But they don't really see it as learning because they see it as, they're acting or they're playing. And then when we ask them about it, they come out with all these brilliant answers, and it's just a matter of saying, okay, hold that in your head and write it down, and they can do it.
Owl and the pussycat went to sea
sea in a beautiful pea and green boat. They took some honey and plenty of money and wrapped it up in a £5 note.
Often teachers working in a more creative way, using innovative approaches to books, if they know a story well, if they know a book well, they feel confident to take a few more risks. And I think that's important, because I think if we want children to take risks in their learning, and that's how we grow, all of us, then we as teachers need to be taking some of those risks too.